good afternoon, everybody. My name is Russell Robinson. I want to thank American University. I am a Key alum, so it's always an honor to represent the Key program at American, whether that be internally in forums like this or externally. Also want to thank Lamont and the incandescent Jennifer Tether for making me technology adequate for this. As I said, I'm a Key ambassador. I love being an ambassador for the Key program. I'm also a civil servant. I am a senior advisor for training and engagement for a component of a federal agency here. I also am founder of my own consulting group, Amplified Research and Consulting, which focuses on research, public speaking, and curriculum development in the areas of engagement, voice, and silence. I'm an adjunct professor. I teach an intro to leadership at a University of Louisville online program, master's level. And I'm also a podcaster. Most importantly, though, I am the grandfather to Israel and Liam. Liam has the twists in his hair, and my role for them is every Saturday they come up with ideas for TikTok videos and Kids Bop, and I am a TikTok video dancer and a Kids Bop performer, and it just hit me. This really resonates with what we're talking about, voice and silence, because I give them total control of what Grandpa does, which can be a good thing or it can be a bad thing, depending on how it plays out. But I mean, I think these are the guys that are going to take care of me when I'm old, hopefully. So when I think about, I like to play this video a lot to talk about an intro for voice and silence. So this is, you're about to see a scene from the movie Ray with Jamie Foxx as Ray Charles and Curtis Armstrong as Ahmet. And they are having a conversation very early. They just signed Ray to the record label, and they're trying to focus on getting his sound correct and making sure that his voice is his own. And the title of the scene is you're either original or you got nothing. So I'm going to stop sharing, and if we could play the video.
All right, fellas, that's a cut. That's a cut, fellas. Fellas.
Band can take 5.
You just don't get it.
All right, cats.
You either sound original or you've got nothing.
Ahmed, what'd you think of that?
Ray, I want to tell you something, and I don't want you to take it wrong.
Then give it to me right then.
I signed you because I sensed something special in you, not because you sound like Nat Cole or Charles Brown.
Well, I thought you liked what I do.
We love the timbre of your voice. We like your virtuosity, your energy.
But I'm a music.
Come on, man, I didn't say that.
Look, man, I mean, this is what I do, man. I gotta make a living. This is what the people want. I don't know no other way.
Well, we gotta help you find one. Look, let's try a little change of pace, okay? You're familiar with stride piano?
You kidding me, man? The man that I learned the piano from is a stride player.
Okay, I got a song.
Uh-huh.
It's called The Mess Around.
The Mess Around. Cute title. Who wrote it?
I did.
Ah, you wrote it.
Yeah.
Well, sing it to me, man.
Sing it?
Yeah. It ain't like I could read the lyrics.
Okay, well, it's key of G.
Okay. Key of G. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's a kind of Pete Johnson thing.
Pete Johnson.
Yeah, that's it.
You liked it? Okay,
Yeah.
Here we go. 2, 3, 4.
You can talk about the pit, barbecue. The band was jumping. The people too, they're doing the mess around. They're doing the mess around. They're doing the mess around. Everybody doing the mess around.
All right, that's pretty good. Let me take it from here.
Now this band's gonna play from 9 to 1. Everybody here's gonna have some fun doing the mess around. Doing the mess around. They're doing the mess around. Everybody doing the mess around.
All right, so that I like that video because what it really represents is a performance issue. That you have an employee or a manager, and they're having a performance issue with the employee that if they don't fix it could impact the employee's performance, the manager's brand, but also the organization from the standpoint of album sales, profitability. But what Ahmed was able to do was he was able to have a real and authentic conversation with Ray, and Ray was able to receive information critical about his performance. And in this scene, both characters displayed some of those drivers of employee voice: trust, safety, vulnerability, creativity. Ahmed actually sang a song. And these, I find, are the things that can maximize voice and minimize silence, which is what we're trying to do. And that can be whether it's the relationship between employees within a work group, the manager and the employee, or the manager and the record label. So I really like that scene because it gives a good flavor for voice and silence in a setting that's work, but it's not your typical office setting. So when we look at voice and silence, and there's so much going on about COVID-19 right now, and I think, I look at this from a standpoint of being more about being turbulent times. And when you're looking at turbulent times, that also gets into basic change management or disruptors to an organization. So this is a little unique. I mean, we've had disruptions of, I'm assuming most of the people listening are civil servants. So there's always some form of disruptor or change. We're coming up on hurricane season. So there's always the impact that hurricanes have. I think last fall we had a furlough. That was a change or a disruptor or an impact. This is a little different because one, it's worldwide. But while it is different, and I talked to a lot of leaders, and a lot of them have said, we've never seen anything like this before. And that's kind of true. But as I talk to leaders, like how do you lead? How do you maximize voice? And they pull on previous things. The biggest reference we talk about is the Spanish flu from 100 years ago. And if you look at some of the articles on that, there were some decisions there that influenced what we did now. Like, for example, the city of Philadelphia chose to have a parade as opposed to social distancing. And that led to a major spike in COVID-19 cases. I also believe, I think it was a Midwest town where giving the same choices, they chose to cancel the parade. So they were able to flatten the curve. H1N1 was a disruptor, not at this scale, but something that we've had in the past. You can go back to the financial collapse in 2008, which really focused on something where you don't really know what's going on. How do you communicate this information to your stakeholders? And then, like I said earlier, we've had government furloughs in the past, and a lot of those times, those situations really make you reach back on whatever your coup plan is as an organization. One thing I also want to say is that it's not easy being a civil servant. Civil servants always take a beating. We take a beating from the public, we take a beating from the politicians, and being an engagement researcher, what I also know is whenever a disruption or disaster strikes, people look at civil servants to come through and be that shining light. So whether it's FEMA or my agency, HHS, they're expecting civil servants to always be 100, and they have jobs where they have to be 100. You can't be 95, 95%, 96%. You have to be everything. So looking at this, I kept looking at COVID-19 as we were getting close to the shutdown through the prism of two angles. How do you communicate during a crisis, which impacts voice and silence? And then since we've gone to max telework, max work from home, how do you lead a virtual team? And there are two stories that come to mind as I think of this. First one relates to Popeye's chicken. Don't judge me. I like Popeye's chicken. So we're social distancing in my house. It's me, my wife, I have a 26-year-old son who decided to come quarantine with us instead of, he lives in Dallas, but he chose to quarantine with us. I have a 19-year-old son who's a sophomore at LSU, and he's finishing up obviously they shut down, so he's finishing up the semester online. And we've done a good job of social distancing. We do certain things like card night, movie night. We cook, but one night we all wanted chicken. Again, don't judge us. I was really in need of a 3-piece mild white meat with red beans and rice. They like chicken sandwiches. So, which by the way, the Popeyes chicken sandwich could be one of the greatest inventions of 2019. Somebody should have gotten a Nobel Prize for that, but that's a different story. So I went to the neighborhood Popeyes, which was in Maryland. I live in DC, but the nearest one was in Maryland. And the state of Maryland was doing 10 people max in a store. But this Popeye store only had 4 people inside. There was a crowd outside. Some were social distancing, some were not. There were Uber Eats and Grubhub drivers who were stuck outside. And the manager came out and was really condescending to everybody about there could only be 4 people in. We're wondering why. Apparently, I guess the week before there was 2 Uber Eats drivers got in a fight. I'm an amateur researcher, so I really enjoy sitting back and watching this unfold from a research standpoint. So I finally made it inside. There were only 4 people inside. There were 5 people working, and the supply chain wasn't working at all. Nothing was getting done on time. The manager was yelling at staff. They were rolling their eyes. And then finally, when I made it up to line to order, she walked off from me while I was in the middle of ordering. And another worker came up and finished my order. And I said, "Is everything okay?" And she was like, "She's just yelling at everybody. She has the process wrong." And I said, "Why don't you say something to her?" "Because she'll yell at me the rest of the day." And I was like, "Okay, well, this sounds like voice and silence." The manager came back, finished taking my order. I asked her, how's everything going? And she said, basically, because of the fight, they only have 4 people in the store. And I guess whoever their district manager was thinking about closing them down. So this is the source of where she is. That wasn't communicated out. And the fact that she wasn't communicating during this time of crisis and actually deteriorating impacted everybody involved and the mood of everybody involved. But I was nice. I let it all play out. I finished my order. And interestingly, when I got home, she had included like 2 extra wings and an apple pie for me being nice. So it's like, oh wow, maybe she's a good manager. She's just having a bad day. She was caught up in a situation where the crisis has overwhelmed her as a leader. She wasn't leading her team. And it was impacting everybody else, and it was impacting whether they shared their voice or not. The next example I talk about is leading a virtual team. So my son's godmother is an elementary school principal in Detroit, first year as a principal. And the week everything shut down, she and I were having a conversation about how she would lead this school, where overnight they went from being everything was happening within a building. Overnight, now they're an online learning platform. And this is a first-year leader where you're still trying to implement your culture. This is happening in Detroit. By the way, for those who watched Last Dance on Saturday, it was good to see the hatred between Michael Jordan and Isaiah Thomas still exists. I think everybody's too, even though we're about engagement, I think NBA players are too friendly, but that's a sidebar. So we were talking about how you, as a new leader, you lead this team in a virtual setting, and how do you improve or enhance the culture, and how do you take your leadership style and foster it and let it like flow throughout the organization, so that when you get on the back of this, everything is better than it was before, and people feel empowered, and they view this whole virtual situation as something that was positive. Like I said, I'm a voice researcher, and I think voice is a discretionary effort by the employee, and it's very powerful. And I think people really need to understand how power and voice relate to each other. A lot of people think of voice as a driver of engagement. I actually think it's an outcome of the engagement. When your engagement state is good, you're likely to share your voice. And people look at voice as kind of being a new concept, but it actually goes back to Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations. Voice has always played a role in us, the United States, as a worldwide, but us, the United States, from our origins to now. It's migrated from a standpoint of how do we suppress voice, to the Industrial Revolution, where how do we let employees articulate voice solely through union channels and mechanisms, to kind of where we are today, where most workers are computer-based knowledge workers, and they have ideas. They have ideas, thoughts, and concerns that can improve their organization, their agency, or their work group. And how do they share those? Do they decide to share those ideas? And these ideas can be articulated to a supervisor, the work group, higher level leaders. What a good voice culture is, the employee is in a position where they have an idea, and they know they can share those ideas with people who have power to act on it. And they know that that idea will be listened to, heard, and maybe acted on. And when power is in play, then it's going to have a myriad of positive effects to the employee, to the manager, and also to the organization. It can impact performance, customer service, retention, branding, satisfaction, wellness, a myriad of things. A couple jobs ago, I had a supervisor who was perfect at that. He and I, there were times I did not agree with him, and I could go into his office after a group meeting, respectfully, close the door, and we would have a conversation about where I could share my ideas, and we could have that conversation. And I knew when I opened the door, either we were going to do what he said we were going to do. Maybe he might have altered what he was going to do. Sometimes maybe he was going to do what I had suggested, but I was fine with whatever decision he made, because I knew that I could be heard and what I said would be treated fairly. Conversely, somewhat conversely, silence is a powerful tool. It's a discretionary effort by employees. And I think it's more powerful than people give it credit for. I think a lot of people view silence as being weak and being timid. But I find that people who articulate silence are in fact very strong, very powerful, because what it is I know something, I have an idea, I'm a frontline worker, and I know it can impact the organization, but for whatever reason, I'm choosing to not share that. You're not being silent if you don't have an idea. You're just not speaking. Silence is you have an idea and you choose not to share it. And what my research shows is that people do not share their ideas for three main reasons. First and foremost, their leaders don't care about what they have to say. Second, it would be futile, as in I can share my voice, but I know nothing will come of it. And third is there will be some form of retribution or adverse action to the employee in regards to sharing their voice and their idea. Like I said, I do research, so I'm doing research with my good friend, Dr. Nicole Dillard out of Northern Kentucky University, and we're exploring engagement and identity as it relates to women of color in the public sector. And we're finding there is still traction in public sector, state, federal level, between the Me Too movement for women and their not feeling comfortable sharing ideas, thoughts, and concerns. And that plays out because these women are middle managers, GS 14, 15, SES equivalent, and not only are they being impacted at an individual level, but it's impacting on how they are leading their team. So silence is also a very powerful aspect of an employee, and that is a very powerful outcome of an employee's engagement state. So this is the basic concept of what the drivers are for voice and silence. Basically, when you feel like for voice, when you feel like you are valued, you feel like your opinion matters, the work you do, you feel like you're aligned to the mission of wherever you work. You can see line of sight between what you do and the mission of that organization or agency. You feel empowered, then you're going to be more likely to articulate your voice. If you feel safe, and from a safety standpoint, and I know there was Charles Duhigg with the New York Times did an article for New York Times Magazine on Google maybe about 3 years ago on their culture, where that really introduced psychological safety to the mainstream. But when you feel safe, as in you feel like you can be your authentic self, you can come in, you can come in with no walls up between you and the people you work with. You can be vulnerable, you can take risks, you can be creative. You can make mistakes, and mistakes are not fatal. You are going to articulate your voice. When you feel confident, and I mean confident from the standpoint of you are confident in understanding your job. You may be in a position where you will articulate voice. I'm doing research with my friend Ernie Fingers out of Bethune-Cookman, where we're exploring engagement as it relates to professional sports athletes. And we're interviewing retired NFL players. And a lot of them we're talking to were undrafted free agents, but they talked about how that first year or two during practices and when they were putting in the game plan, they would they were new. By the time they got for ideas into the game plan, and then you are available, and that gets to work-life balance. 24 hours in a day, that 8 to 10 hours you work a day, does that enhance how you interact with the people in your outside life, your loved ones, your friends, your activities, whatever you have going on? When those are in balance, you are very likely to articulate your voice. Conversely, if you feel like you're not valued, you feel useless, you feel like you don't have impact, you're just in a state of status quo. Maybe you're unlikely to exercise your voice. You'll exercise silence. Conversely, to being safe, you feel like you're in an unsafe environment where articulating your ideas could have an adverse impact on your career. Or you feel, or you've heard from other people, or you've seen experiences with other people sharing ideas and had impacts to their career, or you just feel like you can't take risks, or if you make a mistake, you will never hear the end of it. And interestingly, the ability to make mistakes has has a direct relationship with creativity and innovation. But you don't feel creative, you don't feel like you take risks. You can take risks and you operate in a fearful manner. If you feel insecure about your job, not from the aspect of I feel insecure in my job, like I could get fired, although that could play a role, but insecure as in you're at the beginning of the learning curve of your job. Your odds are the research says you're not going to share ideas. And lastly, if you're feeling overwhelmed, I think one of the biggest things I picked up from research and work and experience over the past couple of years is everybody is lacking bandwidth. Nobody really has capacity. And when all of that kind of comes together, as we'll talk about in later slides, they're going to impact whether people can choose to articulate their voice. Most of the time, they will choose to articulate silence. They just don't have the bandwidth to focus on articulating voice and what may come with it. You hear from managers, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. Well, if I know I bring a problem and I have the solution, but that solution means I'm going to be responsible for that solution and I don't have the bandwidth, it may be in my interest not to bring that idea forward. So that's our basic conceptual model that we're going to work with. So now, what we're going to focus on is how do we maximize voice and minimize silence during turbulent times or times of disruption. We have we talked about how voice, silence, and disruption work. We've got all the ingredients together. So now we're going to do an episode of Chopped and bake something and see how it comes out. Maybe we can make it on to the next round. So let's set our assumptions first and foremost. And I think assumptions are good because one interesting aspect is everybody has, right now, there's a lot of free content out there. I'm in the organizational development and learning field, and literally every day somebody has free webinars. And some of them are good, some of them are really good, some are not so good. But on the core, all of the ones I see make three assumptions that you really have to articulate, because in real life that may not be the case. So first and foremost, it kind of hit me beforehand. So this is the cast from the show Power, hence the first bullet, Power. But the guy on the far left, Tommy, I believe he got killed, and the guy in the middle, Ghost, got shot. And I was thinking after I put this together, like, if they got killed or shot exercising voice, that kind of kills the purpose of this webinar. And I haven't gotten to watch that yet. I just finished binge watching Tiger King and Ozark. So we're going to assume that everybody here is alive. And by chance that they're not alive, it was natural causes and nothing relating to voice. Voice and silence are really about sharing power. And a lot of times, change agents don't want to share power. I used to work in the intelligence community, and I worked for a group where, where they said 10% of the people do 90% of the work. This 10% of the people love doing 90% of the work, and they didn't want to hear from anybody. They didn't want to share power. My view, my definition of leadership is achieving results through people via influence. And I view power and influence kind of as an inverse relationship. So the more I share my power with you, the more influence I'm going to have. I'm also going to be empowering you more. There are people who don't want to share their power. That's the challenge. Biggest thing, there are leaders who just do not care. Do not care for whatever reason. And I've seen things from a voice standpoint. We've talked about surveys and pulse surveys and focus groups, and sometimes you have to ask the people, well, do the change agents, do they really care about this data? Do they really care about the employees? If they do, great. If they don't, that's going to be a challenge. Last and most importantly, emotional intelligence. This is assuming that every stakeholder in the mix has emotional intelligence. They're self-aware, they're aware of others, they have empathy, they trust. And I think, you can look at the data from FEBS and other data, and you're going to find that emotionally intelligence is something that should be improved throughout workforces. It's no joke. I was reading a book by Klaus Schwab, the CEO of the World Economic Forum, called The Fourth Industrial Revolution, where he talks about in this world where the world has become flatter, we have a knowledge-based workforce. AI is more involved in everything we do. The key for organizations, especially public sector organizations, is to empower your employees and your customer base. The key to that is the selection and the development and the promotion of emotionally intelligent leaders. So what I would say is, if you're responsible if you're looking at this situation of this turbulence and you're trying to maximize voice, if you're a change agent, if you're a leader, if the people you're dealing with do not have emotional intelligence, it's not impossible. It's going to be a tad difficult, and you just have to factor that into what you do. So we've made our assumptions. So what we are going to say is we're going to focus on 5 key factors to maximizing voice and silence during turbulent times, which are the 5 things are leadership, communication, wellness, and your brand. And these are the 5 that I choose. So let's go ahead and jump right into them. So leadership really gets to the fact that leaders have to wear multiple hats, especially during a disruption, especially during a crisis. Leader has to be, you have to be the captain of the ship. You have to chart the journey. You have to identify the lighthouse. You also have to be the anchor. That's a lot, and that's just in the work setting. We haven't brought in this layer of virtual work where you have to do all of this at home. But I also think this is, I think one benefit for this, and what I found throughout my career as a follower and a leader, is you really can't map out times to be resilient. And something like this often tests resilience. And what you find is there are going to be people who you didn't think are resilient, and they will step up and surprise you. And there will be people you expected to step up, and they will disappoint you. And I think that's something where you get to learn something new about people. Where when that moment of crisis arises, I think for leaders in this situation, they have to be able to assess where their staff is, know where their strengths are, know where their fears are. Maybe it's something as simple as you've had a leader that never had to do an online meeting, and they don't have the skill set for Zoom or WebEx or Microsoft Teams, whatever you're using, but maybe there's a younger worker on your team that has that skill set. Okay, how do I assess that? How do I assess where people are every day? How do I determine how we can all be accountable to each other in this virtual world? I mean, I think it's important. I think it's important to understand your office culture does not automatically translate to your virtual culture. But so I think leaders really have to lean on their values, like what, and while the situations may be different, the fact that you are exercising the certain values over and over is critical. And when I do research, and this is either at work or on the side, I've often asked people, okay, what are the values that drive you? Because that's important for me. For me, it's 3 main values: trust, confidence, and authenticity. Trust means we can be vulnerable around each other. We can take risks. We can be our authentic selves. Confidence means I will not set you up where you will not succeed. You can trust that I will put you in the best light. And authenticity really gets to you understand that what I do and how I act are true, honest and virtuous. I think leaders also have to factor in the biggest thing is, especially during COVID-19, the situation is fluid. So there are times where you don't know. There may be times where you know the answer and you can share it. There may be times where you know the answer and you can't share it. There may be times where you don't know the answer. And what I found is telling your people those 3, hey, I know, I can tell you, I know, and I can't tell you, or I don't know, are always better than saying absolutely nothing. Because when you say absolutely nothing, people are going to view everything through the prism of fear. And I think one of the biggest things I think leaders can do is look for ways to bring humanity to what's going on, to be able to show empathy and show connection and show vulnerability to their team, so that the team sees them for who they are. This person may not have all the answers. They're going to be honest with me. They're going to give me line of sight to success, and they're going to be empathetic and be in there with me all the way. Skip the slide. Connection. So I think this is critical for where we are now, because I think people have been are used to a routine where they can go to work. You drop your kids off at school, you go to work for 8 to 10 hours. You come home and your mom, your dad, your spouse, your son, and your daughter, and now all of these worlds have kind of merged together. I think people have different worlds colliding right now, whether it's loss of a job. You have people who are experiencing death of a loved one. Some people have lost their business. People now have to homeschool for the first time, and homeschool people who are in different grades. And I had a friend where they were describing a world where they have 3 different kids in 3 different grades, each with 3 or 4 hours of learning content, and they have to wear that hat as a new homeschooler, while at the same time doing their job and juggling that balance. And I think for leaders, it's important to understand where people are and how to meet them where they are. And I think a good aspect is to look at what biases you bring into it. You have to be very intentional about your biases. So I said earlier, it's myself, my wife, my 2 sons. My sons are adults. Everybody has their own computer. We got strong Wi-Fi, there are TVs in every room, so we can be socially distant, and work independently. I've got a friend she's a single mother with a 7-year-old and 2 5-year-old twins, and she has to homeschool them while working 10 or 11 hours a day. And you have to be able to factor in where everybody is, and that is okay. How do you relax that? How do you make people feel more comfortable? I tend to think for these virtual meetings, most people are wearing pajamas underneath their desk. I'm wearing Nikes, Nike gym shorts. So I say wear pajamas throughout the meeting. Wear sweatshirts, be comfortable. If you're, obviously if you're meeting with outside customers, you have to represent your organizational brand, but for internal meetings, be comfortable with who you are. As leaders, employees should feel comfortable knowing that if they're in a meeting and their pet comes and jumps in their lap, or their kids come in and interrupt, that's fine. That's okay. I think this is also creates a positive opportunity where you can foster that voice for people. Let them share meetings. I think one of the things we've seen now is the creation of virtual happy hours. So, and I know I normally telework 1 day a week, and I just do audio for those meetings I have. But now we're doing video. We're doing the video so that we can make that connection. On a personal note, I got friends I went to college with I haven't seen in 20 or 30 years, and we now do virtual happy hours every 2 weeks. So if you make that connection, there's a chance you can build and strengthen and you can build and create a stronger culture throughout the organization, and put your people in a position where they feel comfortable sharing their ideas and their thoughts and concerns. Communication. So this is during a disruption or turbulent time, you can never communicate enough, especially, like I said, with COVID-19, where everything is fluid, things are changing daily, how that is impacting organizations. Like I said before, it's okay to say whether what you know, what you don't know, what you can say and what you know and you cannot say. One of my favorite professors at American University, Key Program Bob Tobias, always said, The communicator is responsible for how the communicatee receives the information. So if the communicatee receives it wrong, odds are the communicator articulated that wrong. Going a step further, research often says that whether it's work or personal relationships, when someone feels like they are not receiving the correct amount or type of information, they view everything through a prism of fear. So I think for leaders, it's very important to figure out what the right cadence is. And I've had some friends who said, you know, we do virtual meetings every morning. We do virtual meetings mornings and evenings. I do an email blast in the morning. You kind of got to pick what's right for you and what's right for your team, but there should be some constant communication. Even if the communication is, hey, brief note, nothing has changed from the day before. There are things you can do to broaden out from a survey standpoint. One thing I would say is relying on your annual climate survey or FEVS totally during this time is probably not the best move, but you can do pulse surveys. You can do little short pulse surveys, focusing on different aspects, focusing on do people have the right information right now? Do they have the right resources right now? Do they have the right tools to focus on wellness? What's keeping them up late at night? Little 3 to 4 question surveys where you can turn it around. Those resonate. My friend Steve Pemberton, the Chief Human Resource Officer for WorkHuman, talks about a 3-1-1 technique he has, where there are 3 things he does every day, one for himself, one for the organization, and he checks in on one person on his team every day. Just how you doing? How's everything going? The cool thing is there are a lot of HR SaaS tools out here, software as a service, that really help, and they help you crowdsource. So they help you if you're dealing with large teams. They can help you do those pulse surveys and crowdsource. I really like Waggle, or you can scale. And I like to use MovieCom. And what those help you do is they find a way to spark that conversation between yourself and your employee. You can get broad information quickly. You can use videos to shape your message. So the main thing is you have to communicate what you know, what you don't know, what you know and you can't say. You have to figure out a cadence that works for your team. You can actually survey your team. Hey, am I communicating enough? Should I be communicating more? And then focus on how you keep that information communicated throughout. Wellness. So this is, I think this is, for me at work, this has been the biggest thing I've been concerned about, is how we as leaders maintain our own personal and individual wellness, and how we lead a well group, especially where you have so much in flux during this period, where I said on the connection slide, all the barriers that people have had have somewhat come down. And in a sense, you have to find the right ways to ensure that you stay well and that you're doing well. And that gets to like wherever you find your source. It's whether that's yoga, whether that's meditation, whether that's the Bible or the Quran. You believe in, and you need that spiritual grounding. Also, what are your try to find a way in these times of fluidity to develop a routine. So for me, my mother lives about 15 miles from me. She hasn't been out of the house, so I am her peapod. So 2 days a week, I hit the grocery store when it opens at 6 a.m. and they have everything, and I do shopping for her, and then I take that to her house. We chat for a little bit. On those days when I don't, I work out first thing in the morning. Let's get that out of the way. that's my routine. That helps me get involved. As the day, you have to develop a routine that works for you. I've often found during the office day, wherever a meeting would end early and you get 15 minutes back, it's like, okay, what can I do for this 15 minutes for the next meeting? Now during those 15 minutes, it's like, okay, let me give my brain a rest. Let's take a break. From a physical wellness standpoint, all of the gyms are closed, but the cool thing is there's so much free content out there. You know, companies like Peloton, Core Power Yoga, Planet Fitness, Gold, they're offering all of their content for free via apps. My good friend at American, Patrick Malone, talks about nothing tells the truth about your fitness like the floor. Good old calisthenics. You cannot hide how fit or unfit you are from getting down on the floor and doing push-ups, crunches, things of that nature. And it's also a good opportunity for you to learn something new. Run, walk if you can't run. Where I go back to routines, I have a friend who used to not make breakfast. She'd go to the job and get breakfast. Not every day she makes breakfast for her and her kids, and that's something they look forward to. So definitely look for the routines. Also personally, so I know for my house, Friday night is movie night. Wednesday and Thursday are cooking night. Saturday is spades night because my youngest son, because he's a video game kid, never learned how to play spades, and now that's become his obsession. So focus on these things to work on your wellness. Obviously, as a leader, employees should be able to talk to employees if they're not doing well for whatever reason. Have EAP information readily available, because the goal that you want is you want people to be well through this and also on the back end. Brand. So I've been doing a lot of research lately, looking at voice and brand. And what I found is when employees feel like they can articulate their voice, they feel their individual brand is strong. And they also find that the customer service they provide to customers is strong as well. So there is an opportunity for you as the leader, you and you as the employee, to say, what can I do to improve my brand? So if that means you're working with a team that doesn't understand how to use Zoom or technology, maybe you task the person who does to come up with a plan to develop their brand, and you include that as part. You say, we'll include that as part of your performance plan on the back end. I view everybody's job as an opportunity to prepare you for the next opportunity or job. So looking at this from a standpoint of, okay, what can we do? What can we learn? What can we implement on the back end is huge. How you treat people during this period of flux is critical. So I think a couple weeks, Bird Moto Scooters, it was in the news, where they called their entire workforce onto a Zoom meeting, had them sit for 45 minutes, and then in 2 minutes showed them a couple slides and let everybody know they were fired. And and then from the backlash, they had said, well, they have been fired. We'll schedule a time for you to come into the office and get your stuff, but you need to return your laptop and everything within a couple weeks, or we're going to file charges against you. And then in their press release about it, they also told the employees, well, hopefully there'll be an opportunity for us to work with each other again. And if I'm an employee, I'm like, really? Like your brand as an employer is so bad just because of how you treated me that I wouldn't want to do that. Conversely, I've got a friend who started a new job in March, and a few weeks later she was let go. And she said they've been so honest and forthcoming with me that if they want to hire me back, I come back in a minute. So what I'm getting at is how you're treating people during this time says a lot about your brand as as a leader, as an employee. So I go back to my son's godmother, who's a principal. Eventually we're going to be on the back end of this, and teachers are going to come back, and students are going to come back, and parents are going to come back. She's going to want a brand where they're going to say, during this rough spot, she may not have got everything perfect, but she was focusing on us the whole time. That's the type of leader I want to work for, as opposed to those where it's like I was kind of left out on a lurch, especially when you're looking at organizations or companies that have had to furlough people with the intentions of when the economy comes back, when the virus has gone down, we're going to go back to hiring. How do you know those people are going to want to come back? So take time to focus on next steps. Like while we're talking about COVID-19, if you're a leader, if you're an HR person, and you're not focused on everybody coming back to work and how you bring them back and what normal is in the new normal, you really need to look at that. And on the back end, what good from this happened that we can replicate or incorporate into what we're doing. With everybody home now, I mean, there's so many articles from the environmental standpoint where we've reduced our carbon footprint, and look at the impact that has had worldwide. Look at some of the relationships that we've had, new relationships, new connections, new one-to-one. How do we incorporate this new technology? I don't see us going to a 100% virtual type of setting, but how do we find that nice balance where people can work at home, maybe we come in, maybe there's some mix in between, and everybody is productive. I believe the virtual happy hours are here. Maybe people have new responsibilities, new work responsibilities out of this, or maybe we develop new routines. So focus on some of those next steps as we start to come back to whatever the new sense of normal would be. And now, kind of to recap where we are, we talked about how leaders really have to wear a lot of hats, most importantly. And they also have to meet their employees where they are, provide line of sight, communicate. It's tough to be a leader right now. It's really tough to be a leader. Tough to be a middleman. During change, it's always tough to be a middle manager. Middle managers always have it rough because a lot of times they're not involved in the plans that come down, and they have to deal with the frustrations coming up, and they're stuck in the middle. From a connection standpoint, having that ability to make a connection and understand where your employees are in the process as barriers have kind of gone down. Communicate often. Communication is better than no communication. Finding the right cadence, right ways to assess, using some SaaS tools. Focus on your wellness, develop a routine, do things that focus on your whatever can strengthen or enhance both your mental and physical wellness, and then how do you strengthen your brand as a leader and for your team going forward. So with that, we talked about trust somewhat. I love this slide, and we're good. This YouTube, this is from my good friend Matt Manners, who is the founder of the Employee Engagement Awards over in the UK. But I think this really sums up what we're trying to accomplish during this period.
In a world with lots of buzzwords, lots of choice, lots of distractions, what can we do to engage, to improve the experience, to create awesome places to work? Where should we invest our time and money? I think the answer to that question lies in simple, profound life principles. Principles that create a culture of empowerment and trust that is founded in a shared commitment to a common purpose that inspires every single day. Trust is the foundation for everything. Trust that the person you work with will perform their best because you've empowered them to do so. Trust that you will be there if you need them, and you'll also get out of the way if they don't. Whilst writing this speech, Edelman's annual trust barometer came out. It highlights that trust in all sectors is at an all-time low. Maybe one of the reasons for this is that we don't place trust in each other enough anymore. A culture of trust is nurtured by each one of us through our daily behavior. Some say trust has to be earned. I call bullshit on that. I think we all start from a position of trust. When someone decides to join your company, they trust what you told them in that interview is true. If the experience doesn't match up, you've weakened or broken the bonds of trust. Too often, I think, we dehumanize the workplace. We treat people differently just because it's work. Why? We need a shift in mindset. We don't need to be running after the latest buzzword or technology. There are no easy fixes or buttons we can press. We need to build a culture that embodies what we believe in. We need to strengthen that with our daily reinforcement of shared values. We should aim to inspire, to empower, to listen. We should continuously challenge ourselves and our colleagues to improve both inside and outside of work. Equally, as employees, if we don't like where we are, we should leave. We should find a company that does inspire us, that we believe in, that we'll give our all to. But directly to you in this room, I believe by your actions, you're inspirational. You challenge yourselves, your leadership, your business, and by being here tonight, you challenge all of us to do more to create great places to work. We're all on personal journeys that don't stop between the hours of 9 to 5, but work can shape them, derail them, or make them more fulfilling. What kind of workplaces do we want to create? Ones that are psychologically safe, where we bring our true selves to work? Ones that inspire us to perform, build, and innovate? We promise to keep recognizing your hard work, your innovation. We will share your stories to help drive change and hopefully, ultimately, change the world just a little bit. So that's all from me. Have a great night. Good luck, everybody, and thank you.
So this is pretty much, I'm gonna recap me. Always, I want to thank American University Key Program for letting me do this webinar on voice and silence during turbulent times. These are the hats I wear. I don't have the grandfather doing the TikTok videos and kid spot backup singers. You can reach me at my email below, russell@amplifiedresearch.com. You can also go to the website, amplifiedresearch.com, and under the thoughts section, we've got articles and podcasts. I've got a podcast with Matt Manners, Patrick Malone, Reginald Wells. I'm trying to get one with the incandescent Jennifer Tether if I can. She's impossible to catch. Thank you for taking your lunchtime to be a part of this presentation with me. So with that, I am ready for any questions if there are any.
Hi, Russell. Thank you so much for your presentation today. We don't really have any questions right now, but just some comments to take a step back. When you mentioned The Last Dance, someone said in that Michael Jordan is the GOAT, and Isaiah Thomas, maybe not so much. Share your thoughts on that. George Reese from our key teams, and then an appreciation comment for your presentation. You said great webinar so far. And to reply to your comment on silence versus speaking up in voice, George said, here's what guides me. Is it the right thing to do? Am I doing it right for the right purposes? And finally, am I doing it the right way?
Okay, so for the first one about The Last Dance, I'm actually so I'm a Washington Bullets fan, Washington Wizards. I still say Bullets. I'm actually reading When Nothing Else Mattered, which chronicles Jordan's time with the Wizards. And it's interesting because if you watch The Last Dance from a leadership standpoint, yeah, Jerry Krause made a lot of mistakes, Jerry Krause is a better executive than Michael Jordan has proven to be with the Wizards and now the Charlotte Hornets. So, I mean, yeah, he, if he's your GOAT, that's good. My GOAT is Bill Russell, 11 rings. So that means something. In regards to the part about silence versus speaking up, there are a lot of variables. So what I have found in my research is people will tend to be silent if it doesn't benefit the group. Interestingly, I have found managers, if their boss if they can't articulate ideas to their boss, that impacts their relationship with their team. So I had a lady who, her boss was a new SES, and as a new SES, you're on probation for those first 2 years, and her boss would not do anything to buck the status quo during those 2 years. And that impacted what she could take to him because she chose not to. But then knowing that nothing would get done, that would impact how she led her team. I mean, I think it's very personal, doing what's right. But then I also think there are other variables in play. If speaking up is going to have an adverse impact on your career, as in you could be fired. How does that impact you from a work-life balance? Can you survive that? But it's very much a personal and an individual decision. So thanks for the comments. Bree, you got anything else?
Yes, we actually have someone who wants to speak to you directly. We have Pam,
Okay.
and we are about to unmute her. So we'll hear from her in just a moment.
Hi, Russ, Pam Sparrow. I was pleasantly surprised when I saw your name attached to this webinar. I'm managing 150 people remotely right now, and I sent you a note, but this has actually just been so timely, and I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks, Pam.
Okay, great. So we just had another question come in. So how would you say to engage leaders more?
Repeat that question one more time. How would you what?
Engage leaders more.
I think so. To engage leaders, it really gets to brand, for example. What's important to them, and based on that, I mean, from the standpoint of I'm an employee, from a confidence standpoint, where I talk about values, my goal, and for my government job, I've said to my SES, when I'm out representing you, I need you to be confident that I'm going to represent your brand well. And you do that a couple times, that fosters the trust that we saw in the Matt Manners video. That starts to give me a little bit more latitude. Now that's a leader that is, for what I'm doing, employee engagement is cool. A lot of times you really have to focus on what that leader's looking for. I've had leaders from an engagement standpoint that weren't as concerned about employee engagement as they were the employee engagement scores going up. So how do we make that happen on the short term, but then also get them to understand that there's a correlation between improving employee engagement and then just the scores going up. So to recap, it really gets into talking to your leaders about what's in it for them, what motivates them, and then articulating kind of what you do through that. For me, it's values. So I can look at what my leaders say our values are and link those to my personal values. But then for me, every product I deliver is going to hit the agency mission through those values they've articulated. And then that helps me say, hey, we're just enhancing your values. But also says, by enhancing your values, I'm going to need the resources to do this. Okay, if you agree we need to do X because it hits the mission target and it hits the values that are important to you, then I'm also going to need the resources to do it. So I found a lot of success linking what I've done through those values. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yes, and we have a follow-up question. How do you know when it's time to not engage leadership and possibly move on based on their past actions of not caring what staff thinks?
Yeah, so I think part of that is, change. I did, when this administration came in, one of our federal customers asked us to talk to their employees, and I pulled research that basically said, okay, let's go back to Reagan. Every time a new administration comes in, whether it's Democrat or Republican, civil servants are not portrayed in the best light, the career civil servants. And when change comes at a personal individual level, you have three things that are going to happen. Either it's going to be good for you. You're going to get more responsibility or power. It's not going to be good for you. You're going to lose responsibility or power, or you have to wait and see. And a lot of times it's very individual from a talent management standpoint. What I have found for me and I've worked for 4 agencies in 19 years, at about that 4 to 5 year point, I'm not ready to move on. But the driver for me is, do I feel like I have impact? And if I feel like I have impact, then good. If I feel like I don't have impact, then it's time to kind of move on. We kind of work with our new employees to look at their career from a career arc, a career cycle. Okay, we're hiring you now for this position based on your resume and our past experience with predecessors. You should be bored at about the 3 to 4 year point. How are we going to have conversations so that we can prepare you for what's next, either internally with me, internally within our organization, internally within our agency, internally within the federal government, or external. I'm all about helping people succeed. But to answer your question, you have to go back to what your values are. And do you feel your values are enhanced where you are? And it's a question. It's a question someone should ask themselves. Truth be told, every time you're doing performance reviews, okay, how's it going to look for me the next year? Or during a disruption, where during a disruption, you have to sit back and say, okay, am I in play? Am I not in play? If I am in play, do I have the skills, the tools, the resources to be successful? If I'm not in play, is it personal or is it just the change? And then you kind of make your decision. But for me, it really gets back to whether I feel like I'm having an impact. I feel like I have value. Thank you for the question, though.
And so a follow-up to a follow-up is on the manager side, how do you communicate to employees what changes are happening based on their feedback and how they're reacting?
Feedback and how they're reacting. So I like pulse survey. The one I use is great because it's very transparent. Unlike SurveyMonkey, it's normally 4 to 5 quantitative questions, 1 open-ended qualitative question. The employees can vote on the qualitative question. Everybody can view real time. As a manager, it's great. For me, being the engagement person, I can go to my dash afterwards. I've had one dash who follows the voting. I've got another dash who says, hey, or I can say, hey, here's what the employees, here's the top 5 of what the employees have voted on. The key thing, no matter what you do, is if they give you feedback, is you have to, if you do some form of surveying, pulse survey, you have to share the results. And you have to say what the next steps are. Now, if an employee is giving you an individual idea and you choose to act on it, great, you're going to tell them. If you choose to not act on it, you also should tell them, okay, we've acted on A, you suggested B. If you suggested B and you want to talk about it, maybe I can get a better understanding of the context of what you were saying or the reason why not. And I know for us, like I said, we use pulse surveys. Everything's anonymous. If someone doesn't make those top 5, I've gone back and said, hey, if yours didn't make the top 5, I want to respect your anonymity. If you want to talk to me one-on-one, then we can talk about your suggestion. And sometimes it's like, okay, that's not a budget priority. You know what? You didn't craft your message in a way where I could understand it. Let me help you craft it. But you gotta say what you're acting on. You gotta share results if you got some surveys or anything like that. But you gotta also offer the people whose ideas didn't get acted on the opportunity to say, yeah, let me give you additional feedback. One other thing I'd say is I've had leaders say, new leaders, well, I've got an open door policy. And I've always said, okay, you've got an open door policy. One of those first 3 ideas, whether you want to or not, you got to act on. You got to act on them. And then the 2 you didn't act on, you got to tell them why, because then if you don't act on all 3, then the word's going to spread throughout the village that this is just an exercise in futility, and then people aren't going to share anymore. So hopefully that's answered your question.
Thank you. And we have someone, Christine, who is sharing a comment about what she and her team are doing to increase engagement during meetings. And she said they've started using the first 10 minutes in a meeting for coffee talk time, and setting group norms for recurring meetings. And she said that has dramatically transformed the team dynamic, as well as another topic was going around giving each person a few minutes to share something that brightened their day.
Yeah, the check-ins. Check-ins always resonate. And that's good, Christine. And I'd be interested to see if you're doing this as part of this virtual world, whether you would continue that as once things go back to whatever the new normal is. But that's good. It's a good routine. It involves the people. You've got a cadence that works, so they know to expect it, and kudos to you.
So it looks like we have another raised hand. Ernest is going to speak directly to you in just a moment.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Dr. Robinson. How's it going?
Dr. Fingers, how you doing, sir?
Doing well. I have a question, in part related to what your topic is today. If you're someone who has been asked to step into a leadership role during this time, what would be your best practice of sorts to begin that leadership process while you are in this current sort of virtual reality with engaging with folks? How do you start off being a leader in this time?
Yeah, so I think during normal times, I would say the book I would use is First 90 Days, public sector people, first 90 days in the public sector. But the overall thing, and the overall goal of that is you first have to assess where you are from a culture standpoint and kind of articulate what you're about. So in this environment where it's a little bit on hyperspeed, then in essence, what you really have to do is you have to assess quicker. And that goes back to those pulse surveys. You also have to project your brand. So that means communicating more. If it's new for you, as in you don't have experience in it as a promotion, then it's critical for you to understand, articulate how that voice is necessary, how that voice is needed. I had a friend who took over a family business in his 20s, family business that had been around for 60, 70 years. They were having financial issues. He came in at his 20s, and he was dealing with a workforce that most times was double his age. And one of the first things he conveyed to them was, obviously you guys know how to do this. I'm going to be leaning on you. Your voice and your values are important, but at the same time, you got to articulate what that accountability is, which says, here's what I am expecting from you. So it's a little bit of wearing two hats at the same time. I think authenticity through sharing what your values are a critical first step toward building that trust between yourself and the people that are under your span of control, Doc.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So we have another comment that just came in, and it says, thank you for today's presentation. I agree that empowerment is key for employee engagement. In a culture with several layers of leadership or leadership involved at the grassroots level, what strategies do you propose for empowering the subject matter experts and the general workforce to begin sharing their voices again?
Fine. So I am assuming that they are reporting to you. From that standpoint, set yourself up for success. So find, one thing I would say, especially if you don't have a lot of trust, you don't have leaders who care, you have to set yourself up for success. So I would find maybe those one or two subject matter experts who aren't going to put you in a position where they're going to have a view so far from you or so extreme where it's going to lose people above, and then step toward their subject matter expertise. So if you ask them their opinion about something, then share that, like what I said before, share that with the workforce, what the next steps are. You're setting yourself up for success, so you can also work with that person kind of offline, so that as you're presenting what you're doing, that you're showing that here's somebody who came to me with their expertise. Here's how I'm acting on it. Or we're acting on it, and I've tasked that person to lead that. That's that empowerment playing it. And now people are starting to see, okay, this is the leader that believes in empowerment. And okay, who else has other ideas? And then I think one thing I didn't mention that a lot of my presentations on engagement I talk about is you have to understand in your organization who the socially networked champions are. I worked in an organization where the executive assistant to the DAS, truth be told, her office was like the Black People Lounge, but she knew everything that was going on. She could set her boss up to succeed. If her boss needed a message to go out, or he needed to know exactly what's going on the floor, if he wasn't hearing from the direct leaders, he'd go to the socially networked champion. So I would say utilize those people who are well respected within the organization, and get them involved. Try to get them on board, because those are going to be the people that, if there are naysayers, that people will come to. I mean, I've had a situation where we were implementing a training, and what I found out was people were pushing it back against the training, and they were going to the union rep. So when we started phase 2, we brought the union rep into what we did. Let me show you everything we're doing. Give me your ideas, give me your thoughts, so that when people went to the union rep to say, hey, I don't know much about the training, they could be like, no, we've already talked to Russ, we know what they're trying to do. So utilize social network champions, act on what the subject matter expert says, but also let people know you're acting on it so that they see that empowerment. And you do it in an authentic way, so that what you don't want is people to say they're just doing it for show. So hopefully that answered your question.